Hold on. Pause for a sec. This is the live brought to you by Bright Up the D, Bright Up the D, you know? So yeah, just give me a second. Let me just put this back on. Searching live. Let's make sure. Okay. So yeah, thanks for those who are gonna watch today. Welcome to my life. Today, it's Sunday, and we are gonna talk about the satanic agenda. And what is satanic agenda? What do I mean by satanic agenda? Now, I did a segment on my podcast, El Power, episode 31, and I discuss and I talk about satanic agenda. Well, in order for we to understand what satanic agenda is, we have to go back to the beginning of time, right? The beginning with Adam and Eve. The fact that Adam and Eve, right, were one in the Garden of Eden, and what happened was God told them not to eat from a specific tree, which in this case was an apple tree. And that tree was a tree that if you ate it, it will give you self knowledge about good and bad. But you had to gain experience. So you would be working backwards from the status level that they were given by God in the first place, which is divine, so that they were ever so more powerful than ever, so that they didn't need to go through that route of the detour to find out the long way. You see what I'm saying? So, because of this, what happened was the serpent, right, which was Lucifer, snuck his way in to the garden and basically tricked Eve. And so he tricked Eve into eating the apple by reasoning with Eve. And so he was able to manipulate Eve and also get Eve to manipulate Adam so that they were both infected. And so they were infected with a virus called sin. And so the sin virus, right, it's something that could not no longer stay in the Garden of Eden. So in that case, God said, you know what? I'm going to send Adam and Eve to earth so that he can basically sort of filter them out of the sin as generations come, because this situation with the apple and the tree and the serpent connecting and deceiving Eve and Adam was a manifestation in the spiritual realm. And so we all know from physical, mental, and spiritual that anything that takes place in the physical, in the spiritual, must manifest in the physical. And so these are the times that it's manifesting and it's coming to an end. And let's look at it like this. The fact that the serpent was able to create a bond between Adam and Eve and himself bought him a specific amount of time. It bought him the time where in that time the cleansing of human beings will come. The filter of human beings will take place. And at that moment, right, basically, God gave him the authority of the earth. So he is the ruler of this physical world. And so he is able to obtain and give power at any source. And in fact, when Jesus Christ came on earth, he was able to offer Jesus Christ all the physical, materialistic things. If Jesus Christ was willing to bow down to him and worship him. And of course, Jesus said no, but that should take into account of how much power he has been given by Jah Jehovah. And so, in that same line of movements, he was given thousands of years because of the type of impact and influence he had inflicted into Adam and Eve. And so those thousands of years was a sign of a contract. And the contract, every few thousand years, right, has to be renewed or the contract will fade away. And so what I mean is the contract is up. And so what better way if we know that in the Bible that the devil has a lot of connectivities with entities, with places of government, with local national authorities. Basically, he has such a dominance in influence in all the sectors that we see as authoritative. So if he's able to control what is going on in the government, control what is going on in the environment, control what is going on in the physical aspect of things, then he can sort of, force us in the ways of what we have grown to depend on, because we need to live, right? We need a place to live. We need to eat food. We need so many things, and we have grown to depend on them from generations after generations. And so now we are at a point that we need to actually decide, what stores are we going to go, what we're going to buy, because things have gotten more strict. And so a lot of times you have to understand that all of these crises that's taken place with the whole COVID, right? The fact that the governments are implementing this, right? There has to be an influence that is impacting all of this, which ties back to the satanic agenda, right? Because if you do not want life, then you want death. And if what's it called? In order to be able to do that, you have to get the people to depend on your services, depend on what you have been providing for them, right? And so once they depend on it, then you can order instructions on those dependencies, on those needs. Because chances are other organizations are the ones who's providing it, right? And those who provide makes the rules. And so now we are having so much problems because there's a lot of discrepancies when it comes to religion now, the understanding of what religion was supposed to be about, what we are supposed to do as a society, as a people. It also shine a light on the influence of faith. What, like, has your faith grown or has it faded? You know, there are so many questions to be asked. You see what I'm saying? Because of the changes of the rules in life. I mean, people travel, but when they travel, do they really enjoy themselves? Or at the back of their head, right? They're thinking of how are we supposed to obtain peace for much longer? Because if it sets in one way, know that nobody is going to put things in place or provide services, right, for absolutely the entire world and not want something in return. Because you need to give, yes, when you give, you receive, but the giver makes the instructions because they're the ones who's providing. And if they're providing something that they say you need, then they can tell you who 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 can qualify for it and who can't. And so they can tell you a lot more things and instruct you to do so many things if they know that you have no options. Or at least they can provide or create a situation that makes you not have any options. And so these are things that many people think about because you can work, but there's many forms of work now. You see what I'm saying? Before it was, a lot, everything was going to school, learning how to do this. If you want to be a media personnel, you also go to school. And yes, those things still exist in school, but because of these platforms that are created, it allows you to be able to express yourself better and much faster. And on top of that, if you gain or you have confidence, you can do a very good job and provide for you and your family, just by social media, if you use the tools properly. But it's a way better chance than going to school for 4 or 5 years to learn the things that you can learn in a few months with certain applications if you decide to do your research and pay more attention. See what I'm saying? Because right now, we're in a time of time of change, right? The culture of the dragon. And you have to understand, this is circumstance or this implementation took place in the spiritual realm at the beginning of our existence. Before us humans even lived on earth, this took place. So it has taken place spiritually, right? The Garden of Eden. And says first will be last, last will be first. That means you must take a look at the beginning of the time. Because there has to be a tail, there has to be a head. Revelation, right, is showing the things of end time, but it is exactly the same as the beginning of time. You see what I'm saying? So even Revelation, right, is at the end of time, but at the same time is at the beginning of time. You see what I'm saying? Because when the serpent tricked Adam and Eve, right, they had an oath that they bonded. And you see, because the creation of the devil was at that time the second most powerfulest, right, before humans, right, he knew a lot of things to do. And so if he was a car, if he put a curse on you, or if he had a covenant with you, the way he would do it is with time, right? And so God can put time on every creation he created so that, you know what I mean? So that he always have absolute power. Though he does not force you, but he creates you in a fair manner. And so for all his creation, he has control over them. And so because he has that, he has put in time on it. And so that time is running out. And because the time is running out is why you are seeing such discrepancy. You're seeing such rush, such actions that are being, taken, that are breaking codes of honor, codes of human rights, and all these different things, right? Because it's an order that has taken place in the spiritual realm at the beginning of time, before religion, right? Before we knew about all religions, this situation took place. And so it is manifesting physically in this aspect because guess what? That is what manifested spiritually. When it manifests physically, you could not know what it could be something completely different, but it's playing out the same way. It just the concept of spiritual intellect that is able to foresee that, because we are a computer. And you see, computers have all kinds of cameras, all kinds of intellect. But ours is special because we're an organism, right? That we know so little about ourselves. But for sure we know we have a third eye. And the opening of a third eye is a new wave of opening of wisdom, spirituality, right? Growth, evolution. And we need to open our third eye because we're in an era where things make sense, right? Things that make sense don't seem to make sense physically anymore. You see what I'm saying? So, and things that don't make sense seem like it's making sense because we are at the end of our flesh era and we need to be looking to connect with our spiritual side. You see what I'm saying? Because if we don't see the betterness of ourselves, if we don't see what we are doing and the how fast and rapid the changes we are making towards, the bad and negative side of society. Because some may say, oh, it's a change towards the better. But what about human rights? What about respecting one another? What about accepting our differences in the choices we make, right? I mean, political parties, I wonder if you guys run a campaign and your campaign, right, comes out that one party won. And once the one party won, does the one party discriminate against the other party? Because the thing is, it seems like that's what's happening, right? If one party wants a certain specific, choice, and they made that choice, and the others disagree and they don't want to make that choice because they have their reasons. So, do they not get the same treatment and respect, or they get discriminated against? You know? So, there's so many things, right, that we need to really take into account. Because, I mean, satanic agenda is realistic. There is so many things that is taking place in the world today. We need to carefully think. We need to quickly act and act in the right direction. We shouldn't act in the interest of a certain particular party. because this is an interest for all humanity, right? And I am saying, right, all these situations that's taking place in public today, all these mandates, all these implementations, right, is all a description of the story of Adam and Eve and how it started before religion. You see what I'm saying? It started before we lived on earth. And so, what manifests spiritually, right? Because it's like this: God had to create a portal of time for this same circumstance to replay out physically in order for we to be able to see. So it's like this: there is what's it called? When God shows you a vision or shows you a sign, and basically, let's say he showed you a vision of your enemies and what your enemies was plotting against you. And so if you're a firm believer and he showed it to you and you seen that, yes, right, you felt it was real and it was a negative outcome. But as long as he has shown you fully and you are fully aware, your spirit is fully aware, your physical, your mental, three components of your body parts, right, is aware, your full being, then as long as you have confidence in what he has shown you and you will learn to take yourself, so that means he will prevent it from happening because he has shown you. And so because he has shown you, it means that you will physically be careful, mentally be careful, and spiritually, since your spirit, right, is all purpose, all knowing, right, then for sure it will provide you an opportunity not to fall into that trap of your enemies. And so that's an example of what happened in the Garden of Eden. The fact that Adam and Eve listened to Lucifer and they got connected to a oath, basically they have a bondage. So that bondage, right, is being manifested physically. Now, into, whether you decide to take the virus, take the vaccine or not. You see what I'm saying? It ties back. Because now it's like this. We are at the end of our lesson. We're at the end of our lesson of the knowledge, the tree of knowledge. You see what I'm saying? We are at the end of our lesson. At the beginning, first will be last, last will be first. So at the beginning, now we are at the end of that journey. So it's like a journey that we went on. You see what I'm saying? And the master of that journey, right, is Lucifer, because he knows all about that tree and he knows what that tree can potentially do to us, right? And so it because the life is like that, right? We basically have this situation that Lucifer basically sent us on a course. This is also a reminder of the Lion King. See what I'm saying? Now tell me something. If in Lion King, if Uncle what's it called, Simba's uncle, Scar, did not manipulate and deceive Simba and say, only the brave lions, right? Only the brave lions go to the elephant graveyard, right? Even though his father, Simba's father, warned him, then none of this would happen, right? And so these are things that create such horrible situations. And so this is a classic example of that, right? Classic example of Lucifer deceiving Adam and Eve, just like Scar in Lion King, right? Deceive Simba to cause a crisis. And so now we weren't very knowledgeable with the knowledge tree at the beginning, but now we are, because now we had to physically learn it for ourselves. And so we are able to make the choices. But the fact that we had a free will and we took it for granted is why we are learning so many different things today. And so we need to understand that even though we are the end, the answers is at the beginning, right? Because it's almost like this. Whenever divine beings do things in the spiritual, it will play out physically, and it could have happened maybe 2 seconds in the spiritual. It could play out for 2 years in the physical. So because of the type of power, both both parties had, when they do things, it takes a long time to manifest. So all these decades and generations, you see, when Adam and Eve first were sent here, Lucifer was already here. And he came first before them. So he already had plans for it to manifest. And he had plans to control the manifestation and how it plays out physically. And so now he's trying to execute his plans so that there could be, more time, and that he can create a circumstance where he will always be worshipped and he will be the ruler and he'll be able to do anything and basically say he won because God has forgotten about his creation. You see what I'm saying? But God already has plans and is already manifested that he lost. You see what I'm saying? So already played out in the spiritual and is being played out physically. So though there's a lot of missing things, missing books in the Bible, some were interpreted wrongly, even though, they didn't mean to interpret it in a wrong way, and some were interpreted, wrongly, purposely. But the fact is, the Bible, the book, right? The book of life has to be taken into account in 3 categories. You have to read and analyze the book of life in 3 categories. The physical side of it, right? The fact that you have to understand physically there is people, human beings wrote it. So there's going to be mistakes no matter how smart the people are. It's just according to certain translations or certain eras or certain unfound knowledge And so the inspiration from God, when He is inspiring you to write it, right, can be written, 80%. Why? Because maybe your vessel is 80 is of 80% of quality. So you're only able to provide 80% of good quality and 20% bad. Some are higher, some are lower. And so you have to take into account that's how humans are, because we're not perfect. So it won't be translated perfectly. It won't be fully written 100%. But the idea of the language, the idea of the meaning, the parables, right? Most of it is right. And so when you analyze it from the physical perspective, understand that it's only going to give you 80% maximum or 85% quality of truth. And so mentally, you have to be willing to be able to filter out the bad and the good. And spiritually, you have to remain intact with the faith so that you will be able to oversee some of the mistakes that the scholars have written, that the other translators have translated. Why? Because when you have a full connection, sometimes you won't physically understand what you are reading or understand. Even though you reading it, you don't fully understand what the parables mean. But with the spiritual side, you are able to conclude, right? So there is higher intellect, and being able to use them at the right time helps you with the walk and the journey of God, right? If you look to people and what they say and how they perceive it, you will always be held back and confined to the people's understanding of what you should be. The person that understands it from a physical perspective only cannot understand the mental perspective. And the person that understands it from the mental perspective only cannot understand what the spiritual perspective. But if you understand it on a spiritual perspective fully and only, then you will always grow because there's no limit to the spiritual perspective. So physically there is a limit, mentally there's a limit, but spiritually there is no limit. And so our most important component, our spiritual side, must always be fed so that we understand the concept when it's being played out physically. Because you see, if God does not give permission, right, and we will always find records in the account of God's permission in certain aspects and understanding. You see what I'm saying? So if I didn't understand the concept of God from the spiritual side, I would not understand that this mandate that is taking place in society today, right, is a covenant that the serpent, the dragon, had with Adam and Eve, and is being played out today physically. You see what I'm saying? Because if we fuse with the beast, then God will fully forget about us, his children. But that's if you're not aware to take the mark again. Because the first time, it's not our fault because it was only Adam and Eve and they were new. But now, his generations after after decades of living, of passing and going and changing and understanding, and the word of God spreading, Jesus coming, before Jesus, before Noah, Enoch, like Elijah, Elisha, like all of these things played. And so these things being manifested, being played out physically is has to only be the story of Adam and Eve, serpent, God sending them here. He sent us here just to filter us. And now it makes sense because he has done these in generations. He did it with Noah, with the ark, building of the ark. He did it with, Abraham, destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Abraham being the forefathers and the fathers of the earth, of the nations, right? He did it with Moses. Let my people go in ancient Egypt. And so he continuously with David, right? With Solomon. So all these stories, all these people that he used, they weren't perfect. But he understood that the sin that they had was something that it basically was a covenant that that therefore the original human, which is Adam and Eve, created. And so with that, any production in the first phase is a chance. Basically, it could not be our fault that we sin. But what could be our fault is going through it is like basically at the beginning of your study, right? It's not your fault. You make mistakes, right? Whatever mistakes you're making, all of these is to learn. Now we have the exams. So the exam is either you pass or you fail. So either yes or no. Now, if it's yes, everything is simplified for you, and basically you get to do that. But the end result is you're not going to win the prize, the main prize, eternal prize. So, but your physical life would be easier for you. You see what I'm saying? But if you say no, your physical life will get harder and harder, but your spiritual life will get better and better. And you will gain the spiritual eternal prize, right, from our Maker. And so these are the two options. And so I think that's the time that we're at in the timeline, which is either you renew your membership or you say, no, fine, I'm not going to renew my membership. I want my divine body. I want to go to my Father's house. You see what I'm saying? I want to go back to my celestial body. I want that full power that I'm entitled to as a human being. So basically, though God created Adam 1, he has given us an opportunity, just like Adam, all across the board, to be able to decide, like how Adam and Eve decided. And so that will give us a different divine and power and authority altogether. And so that's what we need to be looking into. That's what we need to understand. That the governments are allowed to do this because God has allowed it to take place. Now, a lot of people might not agree, but I am telling you that because of the spiritual manifestation of Adam and Eve not listening and listening to the serpent because of the manipulation, right? And when that happens, they created a bondage between them and the serpent. And the serpent today is the dragon. And so we are living in the culture of the dragon. And so because the serpent has been doing that and has done that before the time, before we got sent to earth, before we had all these religions, right? Physical religions. And so before it played out, right, we got tied up into it. And so when we got tied up into it, we had to untangle. Where would be the best place to untangle? It would be earth, right? Where we can make it manifest physically out. Because human beings had to go through the trials and the test of the tree of life. So this is like a form of a distraction, a form of school that we need to learn this lesson so we can pass the ultimate eternal test. And once we have passed this eternal test, right, it's going to physically not make sense because it's physically going to be very hard, right? Why? Because physically we are flesh, and the flesh wants something different than the spirit. So they're always fighting. And so because they're always fighting, right, one is always constantly trying to overtake the other. And so one is always battling. So that is why what you're physically intaking can also mean it's bad for your spiritual enhancement. And so the good thing is, if you spiritually enhance yourself, it will balance out your physical and your mental. So look to your spirit, look to grow your spirit, look to intensify your spirit, right? Look to, educate your spirit, because you're going to need it in the real life that matters. And in the spiritual life, if you are spiritually powerful, then physically it will help you in many ways, right? Obtain so much blessings, so much, so much power, so much authority, so much wisdom. And believe me, that is how we are living today. And satanic agenda is where we're at. And that is why the devil wants to quickly move in action. His whole plan is that few simple movements, the bondage, the contract that he created. That's why God didn't take away his power. Because if God took away his power, it would not manifest properly physically. It would change everything. And so he sort of tied himself, right? It's like he tied himself to us. You see what I'm saying? By infusing his DNA with ours, so that it will influence us to be able to sin as well. And if we are doing that, then basically we cannot enter heaven because we're not of quality, right? And so he basically did that to try to hinder us from our life, our true calling, our true self, our true position in life. Because if God made us second to all his creation, that means we have more authority than Satan, all the angels and everything, right? Even all the highest level of his creation, we have authority over that. And that is incredible authority. No wonder jealousy will be so much. No wonder deceit and manipulation took place. But now we have the choice to be able to say no. We don't want to do that. We want this, right? Because this is going against all the things that we know, we grown to know. It's going against the democracy that we grew up on. And everything that we've been taught that we should treat each other the long way of racism, right? We come a long way. We can't fall back into that depressional state because it's no good. You tell me, who benefits from that, right? Businesses having to think about how they're going to move on forward, how they're going to survive, right? People, instead of peace, there's protests every corner you go, right? People, the lawyers, I mean, doctors that have gone to school for how many years after high school? 15 odd years, you know, pass their exams, obtain their license or their degree, you know, in whatever that they study in. And then what happens? You would think that they are people to listen to because they studied the same process, they took the same test. And I would imagine that you cannot fake that, because as a doctor, your practical has to show. You know, you can't falsify being a doctor and then practice doctor in this side of the world for a very long time. And you know what I mean? Their jobs, they have to decide if they want to stay or not based on yes or no. You know what I mean? And so if some of them are saying no, then there has to be a reason why. And so they have the right to do it because of the contract that the serpent made. And that's the only thing that I understood was why he can do what he's doing. Because this was a shocker to seem like, oh yeah, they closed down the churches, they did all of these things. It's because of the corruption, because of the things that God knew would take place in order to break out of the shackles and chains of the serpent, right? The covenant, the bondage that he created. And so his bondages, right, go for thousands of years, and the contract is up. So he wants to renew it so that he can, because what happens is the bondage allows him to rule you. And if he infuse again, then now he has more of a print in your DNA. And so he's able to even control you even further in everything you do. Just by a small infection, he was able to demote our life, how long we live, you know? And sin was a method of operation, right? On how the devil operates, right? He operates in the sin of what's it called? The sinful manner in order to operate. But we operate in the holy manner. And so he had a problem with our divine self, because once we would have known how to use our divine self, we would see the type of power the type of things we can do. And if the Father created us like him, then we can do the same type of things, right? But this time we would do it without fear, without being sick, right? Without worry, right? We'll have eternal, everlasting peace. And this peace will reign forever and ever. And so we wouldn't jealous each other, because what we need, everything that others can do, we can do. And so it would be just divine and perfect. And we're designed for that at the beginning. But because of our curiosity, because of our hardcore listening skills, that we find it difficult to listen, right? We basically made the wrong choice. But the choice also created lessons for us. That's why we have school and all these things. All of them, I believe, is to learn one good lesson, right? And because of that, we're at the end of our lesson. So that's why we call it the end times. Because, the keys of life and everything, Jesus took them and created spiritual language of tongues. Because it's sort of like this. Jesus Christ took 50 days, right, to release the spirit of tongues onto the earth. Now, the reason why it took so long is because, you see, the type of bondage destroyed a lot of power for humans. You see what I'm saying? And when Jesus Christ fought for us, he was able to obtain more power and authority that we are supposed to use in this battle, right? Because it's a war, and basically give it to us in the source of not permanent, but we can learn to be able to stay in tune. So basically, we have to install it, embedded in us, in a process of prayer, process of what's it called? Being able to humble and then and fast, and so that we'll make ourselves compatible, right, for this power level or power source to be able to transform us, right, through the connectivity. And so, which means not everybody will be able to do that, because not everybody is willing to, put in the work and effort. And so that's what we're doing. So once again, it's your boy Elvis Dua, aka DJ More Life. Check out my podcast specials. All 31 episodes available on Spotify. Check out my music, Elvis Dua, DJ More Life. I mean, we do the damn thing. You know what I mean? And producing music, educating the world, educating people in a whole is good, because self-knowledge or spiritual knowledge, the influence of spiritual knowledge is being able to connect with God, and God influences you to relay messages to people to the best of your ability. And my explanation is to the best of my ability to be able to explain to people why a lot of these things are taking place, why certain things are being done in certain ways, right? And so that is all. Check out the links below. I'm gonna put all my my links, my Spotify links, my iTunes links. You can purchase albums and CDs and singles there. You see what I'm saying? Check out my Instagram, More Life. 1 million with 7 zeros, 1 and underscore 7 zeros. What's it called? That's my Instagram, More Life. You see what I'm saying? And so, just Google my name. You should be able to find out everything. It's too much sometimes. Let's give out information. Adi. And just play my playlist. I mean, live is good, because I like going live, because you can talk for some time, express yourself, talk about what's going on, right? Because when I feel the connection with God, right, He relates messages to me, and it dawns on me not to tell people what's going on, but in order for anything to happen, God has to give permission. And basically, there's nothing new under the sun. You know, I really felt that there's nothing new under the sun, because the whole thing, it's almost like the stories in like one of those crystal balls that you shake at Christmas, and you see the snow falling right into that concept of what's it called, of environment. So everything, the world is bottled up. We're inside the world. Now the Garden of Eden was small. So the things that spiritually manifested there is what God has sent to earth. And it's like, here is the big screen. So it took place, manifested on the small screen, and then it's going to physically play out on earth, which it has been on the big screen. And so now we're at the end, where we must now look to the beginning, right, to correct, because what happened at the beginning is what got us here. So at the end, we'll get the same test, but it's just going to look different physically. And that's what we're going through, right? Being able to, what's it called, give up a lot of things. Because back in the days, right, they didn't have this advancement, but there were a lot of things that they didn't have, right? They didn't have cars, right? They didn't have computers, right? They didn't have, what's it called, like express transportation. So different things in their era made up for things, the type of test that they had to go through. And so with what we have today, where we have flying cars even, right? We have a lot more, what's it called, technology. We have so much things to do. So now we have grown dependent on a lot of these things. And basically, it's up to us to decide, whether have we grown dependent enough to sell our soul for it, or our soul is worth more than what we physically have. So it's enticing, right? The things of today is enticing. Look at that. iPhone 13, best battery life they have. You can literally with the phone, you can make a straight up professional movie. I'm not saying the other phones you can't, but they keep advancing it and makes you want to think, if 13 is like this, what is iPhone 14? Or 15 is going to look? What is Android so and so is going to look? Right? These are all the things that's happening. And so that is upscale living, right? Upscale service, upscale manufacturing. And the technology gets better and better. And the things that they have, it's so advanced that they're finding it difficult on the time frame that they're giving it to test it, to be able to put it out on the market. And so that should show you that is the type of test we are going through, right? Back in the days, right, Jesus Christ will go into the what's it called, into the forest, into the desert. He will fast for 40 days, and spirits and different spirits will test him, and then he obtained his power differently. Nowadays, right, we have so many different things that they didn't have in those days, right? They had horses, and they started to invent new things and learn, but their idea, their focus, their way of life was designed specifically for this test. And so God felt that we were going to fail the test when it manifested like today. So he sent Jesus, right? To what? to change the way we do things. And so to be able to help us, to give us more power. You see what I'm saying? Why? Because we had that power before, but we did not realize it. And so now we are seeing the truth come out. We are seeing the many variations of the Bible. We're seeing so many religions. We're seeing so many, what's it called, idealistics. We're seeing science more and more. We're seeing doctrines. We're seeing so many different aspects of things and understandings and concepts. And when these things are being shown, it is up to you, right? To either say, you know what, I'm not going to let the world of today confine me and limit me in how I want to live. I do not want to just live for the physical of me, and that when I die, I am gone forever, right? So if that is your choice, then understand that physically it's going to be hard for you to live, right? That kind of life, because you are choosing to accept your spiritual way of life as your main way of life. And so that requires you to sacrifice other things. Sacrifice, the mandates, things that you cannot go into a restaurant and eat, right? You cannot go to the gyms and exercise. And so these are the changes of society. And of course, more drastic changes will come, because this is the life we have chose, right? So which one is more important to you, physical or spiritual or mental? Because it is a choice ultimately every single human being alive today must make. And so some are making it sooner than others. But those who have not, you must stay strong. You must be confined to your belief, but make sure you are making the right choice, because there's no room for lukewarm. It's either you're hot or you're cold. See what I'm saying? Just make that proper choice, because ultimately that is all you have, right? You've seen in the last couple of years, I've shown you that no matter what, your career means nothing. All that matters is you and your family and the choices you make. And so all of these people that have spent generations after generation educating themselves, learning about so many different things, now has found out that the bottom line is, are you going to take it or are you not going to take it? Yes or no? That's the bottom line. And so they have to think long and hard. Some don't, but some do, about the choices they're going to make, because every choice alters your life, whether to the physical goodness that you see, right? Or to God's promises that He has made. So you could be physically stressed, but spiritually happy, because you're spiritually at peace, knowing that when you go, you're going to connect back with your Maker, and your Maker is going to be proud of the decisions and the choices you made while you were physically alive. Or you can decide to say, forget about my Maker. I am going to go with my physical decision, so that when I am physically gone, I am gone forever. See what I'm saying? Because your flesh it cannot do good without a soul. You see what I'm saying? It cannot live without a spirit. And so you must decide. We are a vessel. Our body is a temporary flesh, a temporary suit for our spirits to dwell in. See what I'm saying? Use it wisely. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. For those of you guys who are going to watch this or watch it to the end, let me know what you guys think of these segments. Right? Message me, link. See what I'm saying? Subscribe to all my comments, like, comment, and share. And yeah, I like doing these segments. It's a nice day outside. And make your wise choice, because that is going to decide how you live your life. And you only have one life to live. So make it count. Okay? Have a nice day. Bye now.